All right, so it is obviously a very, very full program indeed. And we're going to be trying to keep people as tight as possible. We are starting ever so slightly late, and so we will try and draw that time back during the course of the day. But without too much further ado, I'd like to welcome up Dr. John Ledger. He is a PhD from Wits University. He ran the Endangered Wildlife Trust for many, many years and is now an associate professor of energy at the University of Johannesburg. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. John Ledger.
We were inspired while planning this event by this book called The God Species by Michael Linus. And it's a popular account of the work of the Stockholm Resilience Center, which brings together a whole bunch of scientists. And they have come up with a notion of planetary boundaries. And they've come up with 9 of them. And the message from this group of thinkers is that as humanity, we face a number of boundaries beyond which we shouldn't push the planet. Okay? You've had a look at them. There's 9 of them. You used to think that climate change was the biggest thing on the agenda, but it's not. It's one of 9 different issues. They say that we have already exceeded the boundary on the first 3. The others are a little bit less known, and encouragingly, we are told that the ozone boundary is a success story, that through the collaborative efforts of humans around the world, we were able to remove the artificial refrigerants which were causing the hole in the ozone layer, and we pulled back from that boundary. Now, in welcoming you all here today, we are going to have a very busy time. We have a number of experts who are going to cover some of the planetary boundaries. Yolan from EWT will look at the biodiversity boundary. Our guest from England, Piers Corbyn, is going to look at the climate change boundary, and some of our energy speakers are also going to touch on that. And then I thought I would just raise the issue of the nitrogen boundary to you, because we hit 7 billion human beings in 2011. And the only reason why we can support that number of people on the planet is because a couple of clever Germans in 1902 managed to synthesize ammonia, and that is how we make our artificial fertilizers, which took the place of the bird and bat guano, which was what we used to grow our crops before then. So today we are able to make nitrogen. So humans have become as smart as the little bacteria in the nodules of leguminous plants, and we can make our own nitrogen. The negative is that the runoff of all the nitrogen that we're putting on all the crops to feed all the people is having a negative effect, and vast areas of fresh water and the ocean are contaminated with nitrogen. And this is one of the planetary boundaries that I would be very worried about. Also a reminder of the air that we breathe is mostly nitrogen, some oxygen, some argon, and then a few trace elements of other stuff. The freshwater boundary is going to be explored for us today by Dr. Anthony Turton. I've put Andre de Freitas from the Forest Stewardship Council down as someone who's going to be talking about land and the wise use of land. There's a boundary about toxics. We throw a lot of stuff into the dumps, and we ditch a lot of compact fluorescent bulbs which contain mercury, and we really are pushing the boundary when it comes to toxics. Keith Anderson and Henry Coppens will look at that one. Aerosols are a little bit of a new one for us. The ocean acidification boundary, Piers is going to say something about that. That is the notion that the oceans are getting more acid because of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. After you've heard Piers, you might want to rethink that one. And then the ozone layer, as I said earlier, has been described by Mark Linus as humanity's finest hour, where we actually collaborated to address the ozone issue. We're going to end the day with Jonathan Hanks, who is a great thinker and active in the business management area. And I think what you need to do by the end of the day is digest and think what you've heard from the different speakers. Maybe re-look at some of the sacred cows and the beliefs that you brought here today. You might want to change a few of them. You need to challenge the kind of conventional thinking that's out there and a lot of the dogma. And I think that final session today, after you've been bombarded by all our speakers, is really going to blow your mind. I want to tell you a tale that comes from the highlands of Lesotho, and I've been working down there since 1988. You know, we're short of water in Gauteng, and so we've dreamt up this wonderful scheme to get water from the Lesotho highlands down here. And at the center of this project is a beautiful engineering piece of work. It's a 185-meter concrete arch wall. It's the highest dam in Africa. It's also the coldest and the deepest. And now there's an interesting story here about what happened around this dam at Katsi. You know, when they started planning this project in 1986, there was no such thing as an environmental impact assessment. We had an environmental action plan for the Katsi Dam. So once the dam was built, people started saying, have you thought about the water that needs to go down the river for the people and the creatures that live down the river? And the engineer said, actually, no, we thought maybe if we let 10% of the previous flow go down, that'll be okay. And they said, that won't do. You need an international team of experts to come and see what's happening below the Katsi and the Mohali dams. This is the Mohali Dam. It's a rock-filled dam. It's about 165 meters high. It's actually got a big crack in it, but it doesn't worry people because apparently these dams can live quite well with cracks in them. But it's an amazing structure. This international team of experts, made up of Australians from the Snowy Mountain Engineering Company and experts from the University of Cape Town, produced piles of reports and specialist studies. And they concluded that as a result of putting the dams on Lesotho's rivers, that there would be significant losses of woody plants and fish, and lesser losses of sand and medicinal plants and so on. They actually went so far as to say that 20 to 80% of the woody vegetation would be lost and dead after 10 years. This is very important because wood, as you know, is a very important asset and resource for people in Lesotho, up in the mountains there. And they put a value of 63 to 67% on the wood. The World Bank brought in their financial expert from Switzerland, and he put a value onto the losses that would be suffered and said this comes to 60 million rand. And the World Bank said, you must pay the people for their losses, which the scientists have said they are going to suffer. And incidentally, that bill is for South Africa because this is a bilateral project, and the account for the water transfer part of the project is for South Africa's account. There were some acrimonious exchanges, which is to put it mildly, and it was agreed then to pay out 30 million rand to monitor the situation for 10 years, and then to decide whether to pay out the balance of the other 30 million. There were a couple of ecologists on the environmental panel to the water project, and they said, listen, we actually don't know why the experts are saying that the woody vegetation is going to disappear, because we've been walking down the river and taking photographs for 12 years, and if we look at our photographs, the vegetation seems to be increasing. The rivers are certainly smaller because you're sending the water back to South Africa, but there's plenty of trees. There's even plenty of fish. And in fact, what the Katsi Dam has done, it acts as a filter to take the sediment out of the water. So in the reaches below Katsi Dam, you've got beautiful trout waters with rainbow trout, yay big, that people love to go and catch. And the river banks are covered with trees. And in this particular one, there is, on the banks of the river, you'll see there's a lot of young trees, which means that there's recruitment. So it sounds as if somebody made a dreadful mistake. How did the experts get it wrong? They made the wrong assumption. Using some kind of knowledge that they brought into the project, they said, if you put a dam on a river, there's less water. If there's less water, there's less trees. The problem is that in Lesotho, the limiting factor for trees that grow on the sides of rivers is the floods which regularly come down, huge floods, carrying boulders and cobble and pebble that scour out the banks and remove all of the young trees. Okay? That's what's limiting the trees in Lesotho, not the water. So they got it fundamentally wrong. So now, after building the dam and reducing the number of catastrophic floods, there's more vegetation than there was before. So what lessons can we take from this tale from the Mountain Kingdom? Don't believe experts. They can be completely wrong. They normally cost you a lot of money, and this particular one has cost all of us who pay taxes in South Africa. Not all of us do, but I'm afraid I do. It costs us 30 million and probably another 30 million because they haven't been able to monitor what's happening properly due to various reasons. But of those consultants that made those pronunciations, they are nowhere to be seen. They are gone. Okay? And there are a few other lessons that I've learned from the Mountain Kingdom over the years. The one is that you must be a very good defensive driver in Lesotho because it's dog eat dog out there on the roads. And there's another important thing if you're driving in Lesotho, always engage the handbrake before you take a comfort break. You're here today to learn, listen, make friends, communicate. You're going to meet lots of interesting and diverse people, and we hope that you'll be celebrating the diversity of humankind today. But because it's World Environment Day, you'll also be showing concern for the diversity of life on Earth. So my message to you today, in welcoming you all to the Greenest event, is seize the day. Thank you very much.